More now on the decision to roll back New York City's vaccine mandate and for pro athletes and performers.
Mayor Eric Adams made the announcement this morning. Starting immediately, performers can get back on stage and professional athletes can play sports in the city regardless of their COVID vaccination status. Reaction from New Yorkers is mixed.
It's about time. We got to get back to regular life.
You weren't voted in by professional athletes. You were voted in by the citizens of the city.
The mayor says that he had to make the change because of a technicality, which allowed visiting performers and athletes to appear before crowds in our city, even if they are unvaccinated, but then ban those who are locally based.
And we want to give you some legal analysis on the mayor's decision.
Rachel Demarest Gold is a labor and employment attorney, and she joins us now with more perspective on this. Rachel, good to see you here tonight. You know, we just said that the mayor based his decision on what he calls a technicality. So what are the legal implications here?
Well, what I can tell you is that there was a difference in the original order, which basically said that only performers who are residents of New York City had to be vaccinated in order to perform. And that right there was something that was a problem. It was a disparate impact. It was a disparate treatment. And I think that that's what the mayor is talking about. Anytime somebody feels as though they've been treated in a disparate manner, especially when it has to do with traveling in or out of state, there's an issue. And that, I think, is what what he's referring to.
And Rachel, there's a very big issue. The unions are very upset. They say the 1,500 people who were fired should be rehired. What do you make of that?
So what I make of that is this. I think that, first of all, people need to understand that there's a difference between a workplace where there are performers or athletes who are at a distance in an arena from the audience and they are or are not vaccinated versus people who are giving services face-to-face to people, whether it be law enforcement, whether it be healthcare officials. So I think right there's a legitimate public policy reason for people to be treated differently, which is part of the legal conversation. As far as the unions go, I think it's important for them to understand that most of the workers did get vaccinated. And for a worker who has simply decided to be insubordinate and not follow the rules of employment, everyone else followed the rules. You can't simply change the rules for one group of people. They were fired for insubordination. That was the rule at the time, and I think that was a completely legitimate decision. I understand the unions have to protect their workers. They have to represent their members. Absolutely understand that and agree. But that doesn't mean that there's anything illegal about this decision or the way it's played out.
So following this decision, what happens here? I mean, what happens in the next days and weeks to come? Do we expect lawsuits to be filed, the court of a public opinion? You know, it seems like we have not obviously heard the end of this.
Absolutely agree. There'll be lots and lots of conversations about this, in part because there are people who are still subjected to the mandate. There are employers, probably even within the arenas of people who have already been allowed to go without a vaccination, who want to stay vaccinated. And there will be the people who have brought lawsuits in the past who will bring them again because they feel as though there's a disparate impact and there's a basis. But the legal analysis of that comes down to whether or not there was legitimate public policy interest in having this difference in treating people, and I believe that there was. And so I think that the law will ultimately come out the same way. I don't think the conversation or lawsuits will stop.
The debate will continue indeed. Rachel Demarest, thank you so much. We appreciate your expertise.
Thank you for having me.